ready?
Ready.
Let's begin. When I was younger, I feared nothing. I scaled the steep mountain slopes that rose from our valley with little care for heights or my own well-being. I've climbed 60-foot-tall spruce trees that scattered the woods around our property. I've swam with sharks in Hawaii, chased snakes in North Carolina, and crawled through caves in Carlsbad. I've played with knives and fire ever since I can remember. Nothing scared me. That is, nothing until now. Now I fear something greater than heights or tight spaces or sharks or snakes. What I fear now affects us all. I fear climate change. I fear that if something isn't done to put a stop to it, then we will see serious consequences. I fear that climate change will bring about the end of the world as we know it. Hello, my name is Danny Brady, and today I aim to convince you to think of climate change in a new way. Not as the menace that threatens all life on Earth, which it still is, but I want you to think of it as an opportunity to bring the human race closer together than ever before. But what I fear is nothing new. We have known that our burning of fossil fuels and coal affects the environment, arguably since Darwin in late 19th century London at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Charles Darwin witnessed a decrease in the population of the lighter-colored peppered moth and an increase in the population of their darker-colored relatives, both that frequented the pale lichen-covered trees of the London area. Darwin concluded that the coal emissions from the countless smokestacks that dotted London's horizon at the time had coated the trees in a layer of soot, making them darker and thus an ineffective camouflage for the lighter-colored moths, making them more likely to be spotted and then picked off by predators. And yet, since Darwin's time, we haven't made any substantial progress. The climate debate has remained stuck in the same place for decades, with both sides using the exact same arguments over and over, without making any progress or compromise. Though a settlement was reached at the Paris Agreement, it doesn't do enough and isn't enforced enough to put an end to climate change. The Paris Agreement's central aim is to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping a global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius, and to pursue efforts to limit the increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's the official statement made on the UN's climate change site. Well, if we're going to meet the central aim of the Paris Agreement, then we're going to have to make some quick turnarounds. According to work done by Ed Hawkins at the National Center for Atmospheric Science, if we continue on our current path, even with the restrictions set in place by the Paris Agreement, we will begin surpassing that 2-degree mark annually between 2035 and 2055. That leaves at least 17 years until we reach that fabled mark that's supposed to represent the tipping point into an era full of devastating and frequent climate change effects on the global ecosystem that we may not be able to come back from. But you don't care. If you did, you'd be rioting in the streets, marching on Washington, tossing solar panels up on your roof, or selling your gas-guzzling car for something more electric. But instead, you're still here, staring at me. I'm guessing that you want some kind of solution or explanation. Well, here's the thing. Climate change will affect every aspect of our lives, from leveling our homes to pilfering our pockets to destroying lives around the world. But there is one thing that can be potentially good about climate change. It presents the ultimate threat. It's our common enemy. It won't discriminate at all, no matter your religion, race, sexual orientation, political, social, or cultural beliefs. It will make your life a living hell. Now, that doesn't exactly sound like a good thing, does it? And you'd be right if that were all there is. But there's more to this riddle. Consider this. What has been the common factor in every single successful revolution, revolt, or social reform throughout history? There has been a common enemy among the people, and so they united to overcome and defeat it. 2 years ago, I performed an expository speech about the 6th mass extinction that we could see within our lifetime. Its cause? Climate change. It placed well, getting within the top 3 places at every meet leading up to state, but after the DDF season ended, that was it. Nothing happened. Even after performing it in my hometown, I never saw a change. It took me a while to realize that what I was doing was the exact same thing that climate scientists have been doing for decades. I was spewing facts and statistics out of my mouth with the hope that they alone would show people that climate change will bring about the apocalypse. However, in every revolution, it has never been facts alone that have brought about change. It was the George Washingtons, the Gandhis, the MLKs who were able to unite the people against a common enemy and then transform the world. What I'm asking of you is to set aside your discrepancies, your hate, your religious or cultural beliefs, your individual wants, and unite to fight and put an end to climate change so that we can have more time to solve all the many issues in our society. Your fate and the fate of everyone you know depends on it. Now, I admit, it's a hard thing to grasp. To simply dispel all that's wrong in the world, especially within our own country, and unite and fight alongside perhaps our enemies or aggressors. But how long do you think it'll take to solve all the issues just within the US that have come to light within the past year? Gun violence, white supremacy, blatant racism, sexual assault, and pedophilia, the list goes on. I don't claim to be the next Gandhi or Malcolm X, but the 17 years that we have before we reach that fabled mark doesn't leave a lot of time. And so I've dedicated myself to action because I am afraid of what climate change will bring. From the last week of March to the first week of April of 2017, myself with 7 other students, 2 teachers, and a chaperone traveled to the Marshall Islands in the Pacific to study the effects of climate change on small island nations. For 13 days and 13 nights, we discussed climate change with everyone: the Red Cross director for the region, taxi drivers, the editors of the nation's newspaper, students from high schools and colleges, teachers, nonprofit organizations, and even the president of the Marshall Islands, Her Excellency, Madam President Dr. Hilda Hahn. When we returned to Skagway, we began planning and organizing the Skagway Climate Change Conference, which we held this past October, to inform our community about the trip and the threat of climate change. Through my travels and research, I have found that despite the overwhelming evidence and countless voices calling for change, the climate debate has been stuck in the same spot for a long time. Too long. So I began to look at climate change from a different angle. Despite all the devastating effects that it will bring, some that we have already witnessed, like more frequent and more devastating hurricanes, massive forest fires, flooding, and colossal droughts, the combined effort to reverse climate change could bring together perhaps the most segregated species in Earth's history. Imagine everyone coming together, working together, fighting together, pushing back a subjugator together. Do you think that after we have defeated climate change, the menace that threatens all life on Earth, everything would just return to the way it was? To the hate and the violence and the bigotry and the oppression? Or would there be, perhaps for the first time in human history, unity? A new chapter in the history books, one that tells of how we came together despite our differences to defeat a common enemy, and how after that enemy was defeated, we remained united, and the global community saw the beginning of an era full of peace and prosperity and real progress. We are the smartest species on this planet by far, but that's just it. All we have is this planet. We are potentially the most intelligent thing in the universe, and we're about to commit suicide. Though instead of a razor blade or the pills in the medicine cabinet, we have climate change as our weapon of self-destruction. But it doesn't have to be. If we act quickly, we can preserve the world we live in for generations to come. If we come together, we can put an end to our differences and issue the world into a new age of enlightenment. But how? We live in the era of information with the world at our fingertips. Not every solution will work for everyone, but there is a solution that'll work for anyone. Join marches, boycotts, divest in oil and invest in renewables. Let your representatives know that ignorance will not be tolerated. Let it be known that we don't want more oil. We don't want Anwar to be fed to the wolves. That in order to progress, we need to find new, local, progressive sources of income. Do everything and anything you can to fight climate change. And then tell your friends, your neighbors, your family, complete strangers, even your enemies, to do the same. Because only by coming together can we hope to bring about change. Thank you.
And that was precisely 10 minutes.